Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for joining our Jamf webinar. My name is Michael Covington. I'm the Vice President of Portfolio Strategy here at Jamf. Today, we're going to be talking about the 6 essential components for enabling the modern workplace. And for those of you that are new to Jamf, our mission is focused on helping organizations to succeed with Apple. Effectively, that means that we provide the capabilities that enable any Apple device, whether it's a Mac, an iPhone, even an Apple TV, to be used for work. Jamf has been focused on empowering employees and enabling a productive workforce for over 22 years now. We're publicly traded on the NASDAQ, and we're proud to have almost 75,000 active customers who are collectively managing and securing over 31 million devices on our platform. We also host the world's largest online community of Apple and mobility technologists via Jamf Nation. And if you're not one of the 100,000 plus that are there today, please check out that community and consider joining your peers for active discussions and for sharing industry best practices that you can really help each other grow and address the challenges that you're facing within each of your organizations. We have a number of organizations that utilize our services today, from 7 of the top 10 top technology firms to 9 of the top 10 largest companies as ranked by Fortune. And today we're really going to be focusing on what we've learned from that collective community and that customer base in how they've enabled the modern workplace so that we can help those of you that are new to this area in choosing the right tools and empowering your workers to do more. And when we talk about the modern workspace, we're really talking about anywhere work. Modern work really does begin with empowering workers to connect from anywhere, at any time, often on a device of their choosing. It's the result of digital transformation that many businesses around the world have been implementing over the last decade to effectively get new work tools, new devices into the hands of their employees, and also to make their applications and productivity tools available from anywhere at any time. And this whole concept of anywhere work was really enabled by the adoption of mobility as a workplace service. Mobility enables workers to hit the road and to be productive. And over the last decade, even before the pandemic, we saw that remote work had already quadrupled. And now most organizations have some flavor of flexible work that is supported at least for a subset of their worker population. And we know that a significant majority of users no longer sit behind desks to get their work done either. They're being empowered to work on devices that fit into their line of business workflows. And they're able to do so without being tethered to a desk, which is fantastic for productivity because it allows the workers to choose the time and place of getting into the work tools that they need to really maximize their productivity with. Now, initially, these devices were smartphones. We talked about anywhere work and the mobile workforce, but tablets, embedded devices like Apple TV, wearables, all of these new devices and platform choices have changed the way that people create and consume content at work, and also the way that they collaborate and share information online. But the modern workplace is not just about devices. As much as we think about the devices first because they are such an important tool to enable these workflow changes, it's about the transformation of business. And few things have had an impact on IT at work more than cloud computing. We've seen that over 85% now of workloads have transitioned out of on-premises data centers and into the cloud, both public and private. SaaS applications have further reduced the dependencies on company-controlled servers and on-prem applications. And as end-user work styles and preferences are more carefully considered, companies have really started to enable their staff to use equipment that they choose as individuals, as opposed to some generic standard that employees are just expected to adopt. And these worker choice programs are growing. They're giving employees the freedom to choose a device that they actually want to use rather than one that's given to them. And combined with the fact that workloads are now in the cloud, we really have a moment for real disruption in the way that people find their own individual place for maximum productivity. Unfortunately for security leaders, the modern workplace has also introduced new devices, applications, and work styles that were not previously supported, and therefore, in many cases, we are also underprotected on the devices and applications that are now being used in pretty large numbers around the world. Legacy security on modern devices like the Mac, for example, has either been non-existent or force-fit from a technical approach that was intended for another operating system. And that's really unsustainable for most businesses, particularly on devices that are used to create or consume sensitive data and intellectual property. We want to start to take a step back and rethink what is necessary in this modern workspace that users are choosing or that's being enabled for them, so that we can really make sure that the organization is optimizing for the environment that is in front of the worker. And so really, how should organizations get started with their embrace of the modern workspace? Is it enough to give a user a pre-configured device that they then manage moving forward? How much customization should be allowed? And how do we navigate the risk that comes with these new devices? All of these questions are things that we want to dig into today so that we can really get a better understanding of the full set of requirements that are needed to enable this modern workspace. Ultimately, we think it's important that organizations develop a comprehensive strategy to manage and secure the environment they create for their workforce. And to this end, we at Jamf tend to focus on outcomes that modern organizations are striving to achieve as they look to bring both kind of an optimized end user productivity environment, as well as an enhanced security perspective or posture to the overall infrastructure that's being used to support information technology. And in the context of modern IT, most organizations that we've spoken to, from enterprise to SMB and across all industries, they've been working to develop more robust security strategies as these new devices are coming into their environment. And typically, these organizations are building these strategies around the concept of zero trust. In the model of zero trust, trust, as the name implies, it's not implied. It is there, or trust would be established and built up over time as the user, as the device is proven to be trustworthy and builds up that confidence by the organization. At Jamf, we've coined the term trusted access to refer to a real-world implementation of these zero trust strategies in the context of modern technologies. Effectively, what we're looking at is the big picture of capabilities that are needed to be brought to bear to support modern devices, cloud computing, and user workflows that do not get in the way of productivity and actually help users accelerate their access to critical applications and data stores. You see, we believe strongly that IT should never lose sight of delivering great end user experiences while also achieving the objectives that IT is setting out to accomplish, meaning we strongly believe it's possible to achieve an implementation of zero trust in a way that actually makes the end user experience better. And more specifically, as we talk about this concept of trusted access, I think it's important to define what it means in these environments where we have modern devices at play. We want to ensure that only authorized users on enrolled devices, that is, devices that your business or your organization has sanctioned as being appropriate for work, that meet your organization's requirements, meaning that they are secure and compliant with the standards that you have established. Only when you're able to achieve all of these things should those users be able to access sensitive data and applications. And to achieve this outcome, we do need to bring together a set of capabilities that span a number of traditional product silos. Capabilities that, when joined up in one platform or through integrations, allow efficiencies to be realized that really were not possible before. And along with these outcomes, we hope to ensure that each one of these areas is actually more informed and dynamic than it would be if it were operating as an individual. And these are effectively the 6 areas of key capabilities that we're going to be talking about through the duration of today's session. We're going to be really focusing on talking about how we bring devices into the fold and enable them to be ready for work. We're going to talk about application deployment and what it means to take a device that is configured for work and very quickly in a streamlined fashion, put the applications that are appropriate for individual users or roles within the organization where they are needed to maximize productivity. We're going to talk about the foundations that we can establish with management, that we can put in place automation frameworks to make it so that you don't add unnecessary administrative burden onto teams that are overseeing these deployments, but that you can actually enable a modern workspace that is in many ways self-sufficient. Of course, we can't ignore the need to secure the platforms and the applications that we're deploying in this modern workspace. So we're going to spend a bit of time talking about what a holistic view of security should look like. We'll talk a little bit about device configuration and application protection, but also about compliance and vulnerability management. Last but not least, it's very, very important as we talk about a modern workspace that we don't think just about the device and all the applications that are self-contained on that device, but we think bigger picture. It's important that we link in users' concept of identity and role that is being adopted within major applications within the organization, and we bring that down to the device, and that we also provide seamless mechanisms for access into critical applications so that the user doesn't have to go through a whole bunch of hoops in order to get access to applications that might live off the device. Let's spend a little bit of time unpacking each one of these areas. And the first that I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about is how we actually prepare devices for work. This is going to be our first essential component in establishing and maintaining a modern workspace. The reason we focus a lot on device enrollment is that we think it's key that devices that are going to be used for productivity can be configured and deployed and managed at scale over a lifetime. It's not just about the initial unboxing and getting the device ready for work at that moment of time, but maintaining that readiness state over the entire duration of time that it's going to be utilized by a worker. The phrase of trusted access that I introduced just a few slides ago is really an outcome that's achieved when an organization forms a relationship with the device that's being used for work. This is a bit of a bold position that we're taking here, where we're suggesting that any device that's being used to touch critical and sensitive applications and data is one that the business has formally sanctioned. Whether that means the business has acquired the device and that it's a company-owned device, or that it is a personally owned device, we think that all devices that are touching those sensitive applications should be enrolled in a service that you can really ensure that the devices are maximized in terms of how they're being utilized. That means any device type, Mac, mobile, as well as company-owned and personally owned. And it's important that the enrollment technologies that we're using here are appropriate in the modern era. For example, when we're talking about a Mac that's coming out of shrink wrap, we want to make sure that we're using zero-touch deployment capabilities so that we can enroll that device without the need for end-user intervention, because that's just going to add overhead for IT teams or for the end user that we would be putting some burdens on if we didn't have this technology. Similarly, as we embrace new technologies like account-driven user enrollment, some of these new technologies from Apple on the device side, we're actually able to look at the creation of a work partition that would allow for the privacy-aware management of a work experience that is isolated on a personally owned device, effectively allowing us to push work applications and apply policy to them in a way that's not disruptive to a user's personal space. So really important to make sure that we're considering all of the capabilities that are available today on these modern platforms to support the breadth of devices that are being utilized for work, and ensuring that all of them can be enrolled appropriately in services. As you see here on the screen, the Mac might be a company-owned Mac, we want to make sure that that's a fully managed device. The personal device here shown as an iPhone, we want to make sure that there's a work partition that is carved out where we can apply the appropriate policies and ensure that the user can be up and running with connectivity to Wi-Fi and all of their work applications without the need to go and hunt them down and install them and configure them all on their own. So enrollment really does give us a great foundation for bringing devices into the fold and ensuring that they are there ready for work. The second essential component that we want to look at for enabling the modern workspace is around automation. And the first kind of element of automation that we want to talk about surrounds work software. It's really critical that workers have streamlined access to the applications that are going to help make them productive at work. And Jamf views application management as a key component of overall device lifecycle management. What that means is that we want to make sure that your businesses are able to curate applications, whether they're from the App Store, from a third-party developer, perhaps even something that you've developed internally, but that you can manage them centrally and that you're able to identify which applications are best suited for individual users and roles, and that you can maintain the health of those applications over time. That means having capabilities to look at application vulnerabilities and to provide patch management for all the applications that are installed across your fleet and the many versions of those applications that you may need to maintain for various business reasons. And so application management is really a critical capability that we view as being an essential layer above and beyond device enrollment, because that's where we start to see productivity start to get unlocked for the workers that are embracing these modern workspaces. But automation isn't just about automating the delivery of applications to a newly enrolled device. It's about maintaining the configuration of that workspace over time and at being able to adjust to context changes both from the operating environment as well as the environment that the user finds themselves in as they move around through their daily lives. And so when we talk about automation, it also extends into all of the controls that you would expect to be available over the lifetime of a device. Update the operating system, kill a process, execute a script. Many controls that we really want to have available as we think about how we maintain the modern workspace over time, and in a way that can be scripted and programmed effectively so that administrative staff doesn't have to sit on top of the console 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, just to keep the workplace functioning. All of these are options that we want at our disposal for day-to-day management to remediate threats and manage risk as users are encountering these things in day-to-day activities. So lots of control points that are going to be available. And speaking of threats and risk, the third essential component that I want to touch on to building a modern workspace is the tooling that's going to be required to secure a device when it's being used for work. At Jamf, we're really serious about security right from the start. And what I mean by that is that a device is only as secure as it's configured to be. Security doesn't always have to be about blocking bad things from coming in. A critical element of security is at configuring the device to be ready for the world it's about to enter. And from a Jamf perspective, we include capabilities to establish and maintain good device hygiene in the same product suite where we're actually defending against malware and collecting telemetry events from the device. We really think that good security hygiene is a foundational capability of establishing a modern workspace that a user can get in and utilize each and every day, including in a connected world where there's lots of risks that sit out on the internet. One really basic example of these configuration settings that I'm talking about here is the enforcement of a passcode or the encryption setting on a device. These are critical settings that you want to make sure are defined by the business and applied to every single device and audited over time to ensure that those configurations stay in place. But that's really only one example of a compliance control. Apple devices are really unique in how they're built, and the controls that are exposed for configuration vary from a lot of legacy devices that you might find in the workplace. And so if your organization is aligning to standards like the CIS benchmarks or the NIST 800 or DISASTIG, for example, achieving compliance on an Apple device can be challenging if you don't have the right tools. We think it's really important as you think about these critical capabilities that you're bringing to bear to build up and establish this modern workspace, that aligning to established standards be one of them. And so as you think about securing a device, we strongly recommend you think about compliance and what it means to actually do so in a modern context. From a Jamf perspective, we make this really easy with a ready-to-use graphical editor that not only helps to kind of get these compliance or configuration settings in place or defined, but also to deploy them and to provide the paper trail or the documentation that's necessary for auditors and compliance teams. Regardless of how you are planning to secure your modern workspaces, we really encourage you to think about compliance and device settings as a foundational capability to bringing these devices online. Of course, good foundations are only a starting point for a trusted workforce. You'll also need some purpose-built malware protection. As I mentioned earlier, Jamf does treat secure device configuration and protection as a singular product suite, really aimed at protecting the device. And so as a result, they're integrated for our product capabilities into the same tooling. If you're looking at products from other vendors, it's essential that you kind of look at the auditing of security hygiene as a feature that goes hand in hand with the protections against advanced malware and the way that system telemetry is going to be collected. And so from establishing good baselines to protecting against malicious attacks, this modern workspace does require defensive tooling to protect the device or the container and provide these rich system insights into your central logging infrastructure or threat hunting apparatus in a way that embraces the modern capabilities at the foundation. What that means is that we want to make sure that we're delivering these features in a way that does not add unnecessary performance overhead to the device, does not disrupt the end user experience, and takes advantage of the platform level capabilities that are exposed from the operating system. And so where we're able to get the richest set of telemetry and enforce the most robust policies, we want to make sure that we're doing that and not really looking at the lowest common denominator, if you will, of features that might span a variety of operating systems. Securing the device is probably the area where you want to make sure that you have the most platform-specific implementation, because that's where you're going to be able to gather the most efficacy from the solution that you're implementing. The fourth essential component that we look at for building the modern workspace sits at the intersection of a work device and the internet. Threats at the edge of the network, like a phishing attack, for example, can impact workers at any time and really in any application, including the applications that are going to be integrated into all of these modern devices, like iMessage, instant messaging, SMS, social media messengers, and more. It's imperative that the protections be established at the edge to prevent attacks against your users or your devices, as well as to ensure you're not allowing data exfiltration or command and control traffic to get through. We look at this capability that sits at the edge as being something that needs to be thought through in terms of how you deliver it with modern technologies. The way that we used to deliver this set of protections was through services that sit in the data center within the physical campus of the organization. Well, that's no longer viable as we have workers that are out being productive outside of that corporate campus. And so rather than requiring them to backhaul all of their traffic to the company location, there are more modern ways for us to deliver these protections at the edge. And that's really where we want to make sure that this fourth essential component is carefully considered so that the devices and the use cases in which you're deploying them are factored into your technology decision. At Jamf, we utilize a number of capabilities from cloud-delivered proxy to sanitized DNS even some really cool capabilities that sit on the device in terms of on-device policy execution, so that you can ensure that none of these threats that sit at the edge are going to impact the productivity of your workforce. In fact, you'll be able to secure business applications and data, as well as ensure that the user's privacy is maintained over time through the policies that you implement through some of this tooling. And I'd be remiss if I didn't at least touch on the capabilities that we're able to introduce here for end user education and notification. We really think that it's important that as the user is interfacing with the world at that point of intersection with the internet, that as their workflows are interrupted via policy, if they encounter something that's actually intending to do them some harm, that we notify them and that we educate them to ensure that they don't continue to hit against that policy. It's also really important as you consider the prevention capabilities in your modern workspace technology stack to ensure that you are not creeping into end user privacy, that you're actually respecting the end user as an individual, and that you're delivering these policies in a way that's not disruptive to the experience that they sought when they chose that particular device to do their work on. And finally, I just want to mention before we move on to identity and access in this final component of thinking about threat prevention, that we realize that there are, I think, two broad buckets of things that we want to prevent on devices that are being utilized for work, oftentimes in the context of an anywhere work scenario. The first is thinking about the capabilities that we want to prevent bad things from happening on the device. The malicious applications we want to identify and block. The phishing attacks that we want to prevent reaching the user in any application. The use of compromised devices that is important to signal to the organization so that they can remediate those threats and bring them back into a normal operation. There's another set of threats that are a bit more sophisticated that many organizations often either overlook or don't have the correct tooling for these modern devices that are in play. Examples of the types of attacks that we're talking about here are more advanced persistent threats, spyware and the like, that utilize zero-click and one-click exploits that can be deployed silently by an attacker to target an individual, and oftentimes focus on the mobile worker so that they can extract as much information from that individual, both personally and as it relates to the business, in order to maximize the damage that they can do. We need a different set of technologies here. And it's really important as you think holistically about how you secure the modern workspace, that you don't just stop with configuration or compliance settings and malware protection and even protection at the edge, but that you actually think about what happens if and when the device is compromised. How do you go about detecting that advanced compromise, and how do you respond to ensure that the device does not have to be thrown away and the user can be put back into a productive state? And so there's really, I think, a comprehensive set of capabilities that are needed here to secure and prevent incoming attacks on these devices. And as you consider what those capabilities are for your modern workspace, we encourage you to really look at that spectrum of capability and ensure that you're at least bringing in the right feature set for all of these modern platforms that you're going to be deploying. The fifth essential component that I want to talk about here for building the modern workspace is cloud-delivered identity, and specifically the integration of cloud IDP into on-device workflows. With our platform, Jamf has taken some steps to incorporate identity into the foundations of the device. What that means is that we leverage your organization's cloud-hosted identity provider so that we can make it so that account creation and password sync and other user workflows can utilize a single end user identity. meaning the user doesn't have to have multiple accounts or a variety of passwords that they have to maintain over time. Instead, it's all part of one workflow and one identity that they have for everything that they need to do at that business, including getting into the device itself. And while this might seem like an obvious next step for the expansion and use of cloud-delivered identity services, what we actually are advocating here is treating this identity integration as a critical component of your modern workspace so that then we can extend into application access, which is going to be our sixth capability that we're going to focus on here, and really make access into critical applications and data repositories as seamless as possible. With our own platform, what we've done is we've actually made it so that workers have the exact same experience no matter what device they're going to be working from, whether it's a company issued or BYOD device, a Mac or a mobile device, even an on-premises device or one that is used in a mobile fashion. We've looked at delivering the same set of access capabilities and features to those workers across all of their devices and in every scenario so that they don't have to learn different workflows. And we've gone so far as to make it so that the identity integration that I talked about with that fifth component feeds in and bootstraps the access. And so that way the users actually don't have to enter their password multiple times unnecessarily. And we're actually making it so that the user has much faster access and more secure access into those critical sensitive work applications. So the integration of access technologies into identity workflows means that users can more easily access their applications without these additional or unnecessary password prompts. They don't need to go through a VPN setup or teardown. And the added bonus is that as we start to look at all of these different capabilities now that we've talked about for the modern workspace, that we're able to implement meaningful, continuous conditional access policies that can take the assessment of whether the device is enrolled, the assessment of how well the device meets those corporate standards that ensure that it is secure and compliant, and bring those risk assessments into the policy that determines whether or not a user should have access to those really sensitive data repositories, which means that you can not only streamline your policy, but you can make it so that your applications are way more protected than they have been historically, where you've looked at just user identity to determine access. And so as you can see, the concept of trusted access mirrors quite nicely to all of the capabilities that you are going to need as you think about how you enable the modern workspace. Effectively, what this is a complete stack of 6 technologies. You want to think about them as integrated, as tightly integrated as possible, so that you can really enable from a seamless, low-touch perspective the activation of these workspaces and the enablement of the tools that the users require in order to get into the applications that help them stay productive. And do so in a way that is going to help you align with your organization's strict security requirements and the need to ensure that your most sensitive assets are kept protected, even when they are the most modern and cutting-edge technologies being utilized from an access perspective by your workers. Now, I would be remiss if I did not at least provide a little bit of commentary on solution efficacy in the context of the modern workspace. It is possible to have some great enforcement capabilities, think of policy controls, but without the latest threat intelligence to inform the policy actions that are going to be taken on the devices and on the users that you're enabling for work, your organization could ultimately remain unsecured. And so when we look at our platform implementation, we're actually leaning very heavily on some of the brightest minds in this industry as part of our threat labs teams to ensure that the threat intelligence we have in our platform that's driving policy controls is the freshest and most up-to-date, and most platform specific where we're going to be implementing it. That means we have deep expertise around malware as it relates to iOS, iPadOS, Android devices, Macs, that we're keeping up with all the latest zero-day network-based threats that we want to protect our workers from encountering as they're connecting to the internet. And that as we're bringing all of that intelligence through into the platform, that we have a lot of different control points that we can leverage for very finely executed policy implementation. And so where we have an opportunity to patch a vulnerable operating system or update an out-of-date application, we can do so in an effort to keep that user achieving the maximum productivity status. Through Jamf Threat Labs is really the implementation of our threat intelligence engine, and one that's a really important component to think about as you start to enable these modern devices for work. And like the Threat Labs team provides efficacy, the Jamf platform that I've spoken now of quite a bit provides a cohesive experience for organizations that are really looking to maximize the outcomes that they deliver to their worker population. And regardless of how you're going to implement this modern workspace for your employees, it's really important to look to the whole IT stack that you intend to leverage and ensure that you can interface it the way that you want, and also that the partners and the applications are going to be there and supported as you start to activate these modern workspaces, because that's where you're going to really be able to accelerate productivity and open some streamlined workflows. So really important that you think about how you access the platform or the tools that you're going to be utilizing, and ensure that the integration points are there so that if you're not buying these capabilities for your modern workspace all through a singular platform, that you are able to still bring the component pieces together to achieve the outcome that's going to be most important for your business. On a final note, I think it's really important to just point out that you want to make sure that your journey to adopting the modern workspace comes with the support that you're going to need to sustain it over the long haul. Jamf, for example, has made a commitment to supporting all Apple and mobile releases on the same day of OS and hardware updates. That means you never have to wait to adopt the newest technology for your users' favorite devices. As we think about these 6 essential components to building up this modern workspace, you want to make sure that each one of those components, if they're not delivered through a platform experience, that they are going to carry that same day support, and that you have the commitment from the various vendors that the integrations are going to be available when you need them most, when those new updates are available, when your users are buying the latest hardware refreshes, that you're not forcing them to revert to old, out-of-date, and risky implementations and applications, but that you can keep everything on the latest versions, the latest platforms, and have the confidence that your business can continue to operate without disruption. And as we close out the discussion, I really want to encourage everyone who's still listening here to look at industry analysts for their insight and thoughts on establishing and maintaining a modern workspace. There's been a lot of coverage in this area, specifically over the last 1 to 2 years. And if you're primarily focused on security, we've seen a number of guides really focusing on how you can effectively manage a fleet of modern devices, including some report that recently came out from Frost & Sullivan. Similarly, Omdia, the analyst organization that's a sister to the Dark Reading media site and the Black Hat conferences, they recently published a report on the evolution of UEM. I think this is a really exciting look at what they call digital workspace management. And it looks at bringing together all the functionality that you need that goes beyond basic device management. And they present it in a way that helps organizations choose the components that they need to effectively manage an IT organization in the modern era. And it's one that I think really does emphasize the need for key integrations around not just management and endpoint security, but identity and access workflows as well. So another interesting report to consider. And then finally, we talked a lot about trusted access today here, which is the Jamf implementation of a zero trust strategy. If you're looking for a more comprehensive analysis of what it takes to implement a true modern zero trust program, check out the recent publication from Kuppinger Cole analysts. And with that, I want to thank you for your time today. I appreciate you joining our webinar on the 6 essential components for enabling the modern workspace. I'll take a few moments to address any open Q&A before we close out. Once again, thank you for joining Jamf webinars today. I appreciate your time, and I hope that you learned a little bit about establishing a modern workspace and some of the key capabilities that are really necessary to not only enable your workers today with new technologies that will make them more productive, but also how you can sustain that and over the lifetime of the devices and the applications that your business is using for work. Thank you again for your time.